Mr. Zappa, you yourself as a band leader, we'd like to ask you, how does your group function in the broadest sense of the term, which implies your part of the work as well as the part of the members of your group?
Well, the way the group functions right now is I construct material to certain specifications which are determined by the personnel of the group. In other words, I can't write anything that they can't do, but usually each new piece involves some sort of challenge to existing abilities that they all have. Every time we put something new together, we try and extend the abilities of the group. The most recent complicated piece we put together is the one that we've been doing in Deutsch.
Mm-hmm.
That took us about 3 months to put that together. So my responsibility is constructing that material and conducting it on stage and playing the guitar along with it.
Sorry. When you work with a group, when you get together for rehearsals, do you have a very definite concept of what you're going to do? Or do you have some sort of a, excuse the expression, general idea of what there is to be done? And if any of the members of the group does have a suggestion to make, would you work on that, or do you sort of act as an, again, excuse the expression, authoritarian person in an authoritarian way? There's no negative meaning, judgment of value implied in that term, the way I'm trying to use it now.
Yeah. Well, normally what I do is, if there are suggestions to be made, I listen to those suggestions, and if they seem appropriate to the piece, the suggestions are tried, and that way the pieces grow, because the pieces are constructed, first of all, for the members of the group, because they're the ones that have to play it over and over and over again. If it's unpleasant for them to perform those functions, and if it doesn't interest them to do those things over and over again, I don't get a good performance of the piece, so the material has to be customized to a certain extent, and so I always have to listen to what the group has to say about the material.
So your work is a teamwork, so to speak.
Sure, it's a teamwork.
Mm-hmm. Do you confront the group with a score?
Well, it depends on the piece. Some pieces you don't need a score because they're blues-oriented pieces, and you just tell them what the chord changes are.
Mm-hmm.
Other things are more complicated. We have a rehearsal hall in Los Angeles, and in that rehearsal hall there's a blackboard on the wall and has music lines written on it, and usually for the complicated things I'll draw out the score on the blackboard, and then we'll learn it from that.
Mm-hmm. The singers, how are Kayla and Volman trained? Are they trained by you? Because they do sing very complicated tunes. And
Hi, Donnie. Yes, they do sing complicated tunes, but I didn't train them.
You didn't train them, and they know exactly what you want when you explain to them what they're supposed to do.
After they learn their parts, just like everybody else in the group, they know.
What's the importance for you to have a record label of your own, Bizarre Records?
The importance is that I don't have any censorship problems. Hello?
Hello, when you got a minute, whenever you feel like it, right now.
Can we stop this for a minute?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
The consequences? We have to buy some more.
Sounds very simple.
Yes,
the way you say it right now. But will you have to break up this tour, or this concert tour?
Well, that's what we were talking about. We're going to have to cancel some dates. Lyon, Paris, and Brussels. And then we're going to finish off the rest of the tour in England.
With rented material?
Yes, if we can find the right stuff to do it. Because see, we had some very special equipment up there. Some of the instruments were built this special way. And you just can't go out and replace that stuff. So that means that we have to get some more equipment, learn how to play on it,
right,
and then go and finish off the concert tour.
And do you think you can do it in the amount of time left?
I don't think we have any choice.
cannot cancel fully. I mean,
The whole
totally,
tour.
The whole tour.
Yes, we could, but it would be very bad to do that.
For what reason?
Well, for one reason, it would cost an awful lot of money. Do you know, the expenses to come to Europe are very high. It costs $50,000 to come over here for tickets and for hotels and all the rest of that stuff. So we're supposed to be here for 7 weeks altogether. So that's one of the factors. And the other thing is I don't like the idea of going out and doing a bad job.
Yes.
The other day we read in the German magazine Spiegel.
Yeah.
There was a caption of a quotation of your that you made, saying that one thing you didn't like about interpreters of your music, Zappa experts in Germany, was to bust it up ideologically. That you feel sick after every interview for weeks. And then you went on saying that all you do is play rock till it bursts.
I've never said any of those things.
So would you say it's senseless to make any more quotations that are supposedly?
I don't even have to make quotations. I got people who make quotations for me. Why are you interviewing me? It doesn't make any difference. I never said any of that stuff.
Yeah. Now go on with the stuff.
The stuff, right? What is it?
Yeah.
A lot of journalists and people who believe to know what you're doing see some sort of a parallel between your way of composing music and the way of some composers of the 20th century. Our question is, did you ever study these people? Like, for instance, names that were quoted: John Cage, Edgar Varese,
Spike Jones.
Spike
What does it mean to study these people? I've heard their music. You know, I have opinions about all those kinds of music. I've listened to it.
Our question is, a lot of people listen to that music and they still can't sort of reproduce that very music, which this is, I didn't put it very well, but like in 200 Motels, for instance, the music there, the symphonic parts of the music, is a base to a scheme of composing that tells us a lot of your skill in composing. Where did you get that from?
From a library and listening to records.
And no music schools?
No.
Am I right? You write the scores yourself, and you it's also self-taught.
Yes.
I mean, it's a technique. I'm a little bit musician myself. I couldn't do it.
Why not?
Because it's too complicated.
It's not complicated. It's just like learning how to write a letter or something.
Yeah.
If you go to a music school, what do they tell you? Take this book and learn what's in this book. And then you write an exercise, and the man that's standing in front of the class will tell you whether or not he likes your exercise. Okay? I don't need to know whether or not the man in the class likes my exercise. He ain't gonna like my exercise anyway. I'm not professional. So if he tells me to read a book, I don't need him to tell me to read a book. I'll go to the library and I'll read the book by myself.
Beautiful. In your group, there has been a lot of changes in personnel. How do you explain this?
very simply, I've only fired 3 people out of the 7 years that I've been in business, and there have been 25 mothers altogether, approximately. And the people come and go as they choose. And anybody that doesn't want to be in the group leaves. And I can't make somebody do what they don't want to do. So when they don't want to play anymore, they go away.
Mm-hmm. In the 71, in one of the issues of the 71 Downbeat Critic Poll, you were listed 3rd behind Herbie Hancock and Gil Evans as arranger deserving wider reaction.
Recognition.
Or recognition. What does that mean to you?
Nothing. What does it mean to you?
Well, it would, quite personally, it would mean to me that somebody is listening to what I do, whether I like it or not. And
well, I'm flattered that my name would go in there, but I mean, what does it mean? My name appeared in another magazine in a certain circumstance. I'm flattered that at least it was in that sort of thing instead of somebody writing a quote that I didn't say.
For a very long time, you were a musician who wasn't very well accepted in the so-called music world.
Mm-hmm.
Did this reaction that you got or didn't get, did this influence your work in any way?
Certainly, it influenced my work just as much as everything else that happens to me. Because my work is a product of my experiences. Whether I like it or not, they're in there.
Now that you are becoming a successful man in the music scene, what consequences could this probably have for you? Have you...
Well, I don't stop and think about, 3 more people clapped tonight than the last time I played at a certain concert hall, so that means I'm successful. So I should worry about that. I don't think about it. A lot of times the people like what you do for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain to us why the rock influence is comparatively stronger in your music than, for instance, the blues influence?
Why do you say that?
Got me.
No, I mean...
What drove you to that conclusion? Another Der Spiegel interview?
Yes, in a way, to be honest, to be quite honest.
Actually, I was always more fond of blues than I was of rock. So it surprises me that there isn't what you would consider a blues influence in the music.
I didn't say there wasn't any.
Well, by comparison, then, that obviously wasn't enough to make you notice it above any rock influence. If there's a rock influence in there, it would be determined by the manner in which the music is performed by the other members of the group, because they're basically rock musicians. Except for Don Preston, who is basically a jazz musician, and Ian Underwood, who is basically a classical musician.
Excuse me, this is something I don't understand. How could a jazz musician not be a blues person, so to speak?
It depends on the type of jazz he's interested in. If you remember that there was a period in jazz where people neglected the blues in terms of the funky, rootsy type blues in favor of a more sophisticated chromatic type approach to music. And they didn't like to identify with blues music because it wasn't sophisticated enough for them. What in many jazz circles was referred to as blues within the last 10 or 15 years didn't even resemble the blues. You think Charlie Parker's music was the blues? Take the era from Charlie Parker for plus about 7 years thereafter. That wasn't very bluesy. And I think that's the music that Don comes from.
How about that statement crowd pleaser in Melody Maker? Yes, a quotation.
A quotation from Melody Maker, right? It's just
The Der Spiegel of England?
in some ways, yeah. Another question concerning the poster, this famous poster. Why'd you do it?
I didn't do it. The story of the poster goes like this. The first time we came to Europe, I was in England for 2 weeks prior to our performance there, and some photographs were taken of me to be used in an underground newspaper in England called the International Times. And they sent a photographer to the hotel who took a bunch of funny pictures of me, including some with a shower cap on and so forth, and those photographs with me on the toilet were part of that series. And then I left and went back to New York, and I was supposed to return later and play. By the time I got back, the photographer that took the pictures had made posters from the pictures, and I had no idea that that was going to happen with them. And before we could do anything to stop them, they were bootlegged all over Europe.
What importance do four-letter words have for you that you use very often in your lyrics?
Well, it's about the same importance as they have the way I talk on the street. And it's the same way that the people that I know talk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very direct, honest representation of the kind of life that I live and the kind of people that I know. Maybe all the people that you know use 11-letter words that impress you a lot, but the people I know talk the other way. I mean, does it sound more authentic if a person says the word coprophagus? Or does it sound better if you say scheissfresser? Or you say shit-eater? Which one sounds better to you?
This does not reflect my personal opinion.
Just checking.
The reason why I was asking this was because people think, or people tend to think, that you're using this type of language to consciously shock audiences.
Well, can you imagine the mentality of an audience that would be shocked by those words? They would have to be jellyfish, wouldn't they?
Maybe they are.
I don't think so. No, I don't think people are shocked by those words. I think that's an attitude that's taken up as opposed by people who write those kind of articles. You know, they like to think that there's a proper way, a correct way to talk, and then there's that other way that supposedly we represent. And I think that that's foolish.
There has been, again, a lot of people say, there has been a change in your music. Like, for instance, Chunga's Revenge and Life at the Fillmore East, and your earlier recordings.
Well, that's an obvious change, because with Chunga's Revenge, that was the first album by the new group. You have different people playing it, with different interests and different abilities and different disabilities. And you know, a different outlook, and so therefore the music's got to sound different than the other albums. Why should I make Ainsley Dunbar play drums like Jimmy Carl Black? Why should I make Mark and Howard sing like Ray Collins?
Mm-hmm. The album, We're Only in It for the Money, represents a lot of lyrics that are, in a way, a criticism, so people say, to the American way of life.
Yeah. So are
Isn't
the other
there-
albums.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What albums have we made that don't have some sort of criticism of the American way of life? Every album's got something in there for the people who like that kind of stuff.
Don't you think that in We're Only in It for the Money, the emphasis on that aspect was stronger?
Well, let's take it song for song. Let's Make the Water Turn Black. Do you remember what the text is of that song? Okay, that's a song about two boys that burn their farts and save snot on a window in their room. Now, I don't know whether that's a social commentary or not. The next song, I think we have Harry, You're a Beast.
Mm-hmm.
That's mild commentary on some kind of married life. Mom and Dad, that's a more obvious kind of commentary.
Concentration Moon?
Concentration Moon is also obvious. The Idiot Bastard Son is not so obvious. Peekaboo.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you have Jack Robinson's phone number? We can't find him.
Who's Jack Robinson? Oh, is that the publisher guy?
Do you have any Bluebird?
No, I don't have it. I'm sorry. I don't even know the name of his company.
Then you want
But call Fritz, and maybe Fritz knows where he is.
Well, Kirby said he was going to Paris last night.
Yeah, I know, but maybe
Yeah.
Fritz has a number.
Okay.
I would say that not more than 60% of the songs in that album were obvious social commentary sort of songs. So you probably have at least that high percentage in Freak Out and Absolutely Free, the first two albums. So I would say the first three albums contain quite a bit of social commentary type material, which is no reason to suppose that for the rest of my life I have to provide each album with 60% overt social commentary in order that everybody who requires that a group that gets formed maintains a consistent image throughout the course of its development. I think that that would be very stunting. But there's always a little something in there.
Why is this criticism of this type of culture so important to you?
It's not important to me. It's just one of the other things that I do. I noticed that, and I recorded it that way. There are other things that are equally important to me. But unfortunately, they aren't overt. And so everybody makes a primary consideration of the things that are very obvious. I don't know whether anybody has considered the social significance of the lyrics to Mr. Green Jeans, for instance.
Who's Mr. Green Jeans?
That's one of the songs on the Uncle Meat album. Or whether they pay any attention to the words to the Uncle Meat variations. Or whether they pay any attention to Electric Aunt Jemima. Or whether they pay any attention to the words to the choral music on side 4 of the 200 Motels album about the very small dogs. All those things are equally important to me as writing about obvious stuff.
Going through the number of songs that you have now come out with on records, we've noticed that there's hardly any reference to the race problem.
Well, there is one reference to the race problem, which is quite a lengthy one on the first album.
And it just never happened that you were sort of driven to make another song on that very complex of questions.
No, I was not driven to make a song on any subject. If I make a song, I make a song. If I don't, I don't. You know, that's what I had to say about it. In that song on the Freak Out album, I would say that both sides are wrong.
Wrong in what way?
In the way in which they approach dealing with a race problem in the United States. That was a song specifically referring to the Watts riot situation. But I don't see where, if you choose a subject and write a song about it, that you have to repeat that theme every album in order to satisfy a certain segment of the musical listening audience that wants you, as a musician, to sit there and spew philosophy of that nature all the time. You'll also notice that in very few of the albums there's any reference to love song type material.
Yeah, that's true. Well, with the exception maybe of Reuben and the Jets.
Yes, there is an exception there.
And
but nobody ever seems to question how come I don't write very many love songs. All they want to know is how come you don't do social commentary all the time.
Why don't you write love songs?
I ain't going to tell you.
Why is irony and parody such a big element in your work?
It's an honest reflection of my personality.
Can you explain that?
Sure. I wake up in the morning and I'll look out the window and I'll see something that I find ironic and I'll make a comment about that. And I won't stop until I go to sleep. And if somebody does something that I find absurd, I might make a parody of that. And if during that same day when I saw something that was ironic and found something worthy of a parody, if that day happened to be a day that I was writing some songs, then I would incorporate some of those things into the songs. If that day happens to be a day when I'm supposed to stand on stage and play, then I will incorporate that into the show. Last night, I was subjected to some very ironic fondue, and so that was incorporated into our program today.
Yeah, so we noticed. And,
Just be careful.
yeah, I better.
Dus ik loop naar voor de Zit je verder met hem?
Ja, nee, dat is wel erg.
On January 1st, we're doing an international music program with a lot of people, wishing a lot of other people well. And despite the fact that the situation is not really...
Not well, yeah.
And could you do some fake German?
Or fake German?
Yeah, like in the show.
It's not fake German. Those are real German words. They're not pronounced very well. That's the only problem.
That's the best thing about it.
Yeah, perhaps it is. Maybe it's ironic. Achtung, Achtung, I wish everyone well, even though everything is shitty here on Radio Bern.
They'll love it. They'll love it. Also, some people say that with you, in context with a certain album, underground has started.
It's true. Well, I wouldn't want to define it now, seeing as how it's been modified to suit everybody's needs since about 1966, but the first two underground albums were Freak Out and Absolutely Free. Freak Out because it really was underground, because it wasn't known to the general public and was only known to a few people that just happened to see it and hear it and get off on it in a special way. And Absolutely Free because it actually said on the inside that it was number one and number two in a series of underground oratorios. And I think the term spread to general use from there.
What did it mean at that time to you?
It meant that here was something that was not generally known, but was available only to people who knew. It was a special thing, because we weren't receiving fantastic amounts of advertising on the albums. People who got a hold of the Freak Out album sort of discovered it on their own.
Is underground a certain type of way of life?
Well, I suppose it would be if you wanted to use it in that context, you know, and now you're just taking a word and batting it around. I don't think underground really means anything anymore unless you want to believe in it. And then you can make it be anything you want. This ashtray is underground. Wouldn't you agree?
No,
Why? What's overground about that ashtray?
it's here.
You mean if you couldn't see it, it would be underground?
No, it would be no subject of discussion if it weren't here.
But what if you knew it was someplace else? Or what if somebody else told you about that ashtray? What if that ashtray became legend?
But maybe it will from that day. Yeah, it can be overground, it can be background, it can be anything ground.
Yeah.
But
I prefer just to call it an ashtray and to have it on the table myself. Yeah. Because
why don't
then
you
it's
bring it into
function.
context with underground?
Because that's the way you can treat any subject when you want to attach a label to it. You know, like
Which in a way you did by using the word and just making it giving it a content to a very limited number of people.
right. But then after that, the word was used by other people and applied to anything that suited their fancy.
Exactly. We're right back where we started from. What did it mean to you then?
I just specified that as applied to those albums, it meant that those albums were a special sort of thing that was not marketed to or of interest to large numbers of people, but only to a minority group that was had a special, limited interest, a freak-type audience.
What's a freak then?
Well, in Los Angeles at that time, a freak was a person, as per the explanation on the inside of the Freak Out album, a freak was a person who was dressing differently than the other members of his peer group and expressing himself creatively in relationship to his environment, which might have been a little bit boring at that time. People who dared to step over that line and act weird while everybody else was doing their normal stuff. Not just a hippie, but somebody who had a certain mental change take place.
Motivated by what?
Motivated.
According to your own experience.
According to my own experience, the people that I knew that I would refer to as freaks were motivated by an inner desire to express themselves creatively. Although they might not have been musicians or artists or anything, they just wanted to live creatively. They didn't want to wear normal clothes. They didn't want to have normal hair. They didn't want to have normal skin, so they would paint their skin and walk around the street wearing the weirdest things that they could put on their bodies. And they just wanted to have something more out of life than just being a member of a constricting society. So, just as other things come into general use, these people who sort of set that trend and walked around thinking and acting and doing things the way they wanted to, a lot of people on the outside of that picked up the superficial aspects of the way they were living. In other words, merely the way they looked, or a couple of words they might use, or the process of body painting or something like that. And they would take a superficial thing and then do that without following it up with a proper mental attitude, and then those people became hippies. Then the hippie thing also turned into a little bit more elaborate, widespread culture, because it was quite easy to become a hippie. You didn't even have to be too freaky if your hair was just a little bit long, and if your clothes were just a little bit dirty, and if you happened to associate with the people who use the proper kind of chemical stimulation and learn the proper vocabulary, it was very easy to become part of that subculture. And at that time, you had a lot of young people in the United States that wanted something to belong to. There wasn't anything else interesting for them.
What does a phenomenon like Woodstock mean to you?
I'd rather not discuss Woodstock. That's definitely one of my most unfavored things.
Well, come on.
That I find that even less favorable. Monterey, I don't know. I don't have such definite feelings about Monterey, but I thought that Woodstock was an awful lot of mud.
Why?
Why was there a lot of mud? Because it rained.
Before it rained.
Well, I didn't say that. Wouldn't want to besmirch anyone's character before it rained. But I think it's an indication of just how desperate people were in order to have some sort of a group communal event. They really wanted to get together, but then when they got together, the best they could do was just sort of sit in the mud and wait for somebody to feed them, and then the resources of that area were just sort of plugged up.
So the disappointment in Woodstock was the way people behaved, and it doesn't refer to the music that was played there.
Well, judging from the film, I would say that there was probably not a great deal of phenomenally artistic music performed at Woodstock. But the film is all I know it from, because I didn't go to Woodstock. My favorite part of the film was the man who cleaned the toilets.
There was a first live performance of 200 Motels in Los Angeles.
There was a performance of about 2/3 of the orchestra music in May of 1970.
With the Los
Angeles Philharmonic. Yeah. In a basketball arena at UCLA.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is. It's not good.
What do you think about these bootleg records?
I haven't listened to that bootleg, but I don't like the idea of bootleg records.
Because of the economic side of the thing, or?
Well, look at it this way. Suppose you're an artist, and one of the things that you do as an artist is make records. And when you go in to make a record, you're very careful about the way you make a record. You spend a great amount of time trying to get the right performance recorded. You record it the best way that you can. Then you mix it the best way that you can. And then you make sure that the album cover is suited to the music that's in the album. And then you go through all the process of making sure that it gets onto the disc properly. And then that is what you do, that is your art. Meanwhile, somebody else comes along with a cassette machine and sits in the audience and makes a shitty recording and puts it on a record in a white jacket and sticks it out with your name on it. Now, how do you feel?
I think it's because people are so enthusiastic about this music.
I don't think so at all. I think it's just because there was somebody there with a machine that made a recording and decided he would make $1 on it.
Maybe the man who made it, that's true, but
Those who buy
there
it.
are some others who bought it. Some of my friends, they were just very enthusiastic about the music.
Yeah.
And
Well, tell them that maybe they would have liked it better if they would have heard the music.
yeah, we are sure, but it's the only way we had an opportunity to hear, to listen what was going on there.
Yeah.
Why is the material of the records sometimes not very good, of a few records? Because I think
You
that
mean the
they-
pressing material?
Yes.
Because from country to country, the quality of the material and the care with which the masters are made varies a great deal. We usually have good mastering from Germany, but the English masters are not good. They use bad vinyl, and they're not careful with the cutting of the metal parts and so forth. It's just, but it's hard enough to control that in the United States with 3 major pressing plants. You can't check up on that, let alone every individual country in Europe, and find out what's happening. Like, for instance, I went to Italy last year, and somebody handed me an album of Hot Rats to sign. I looked at it, opened it up. The whole inside of it was in black and white. I'm going, what? Then another Weasels Rip My Flesh. It was released in Germany last year. They didn't even use the right cover on it. They made up their own cover. They didn't like the cover that we had prepared. Yeah. And I thought that cover was extremely offensive, and we complained about that. Now there's an album that Deutsche Grammophon has put out that has the toilet poster on the front. I never made that album. They made that album. So we're going to sue them. It's very difficult to sit in Los Angeles and find out what's going on all over the rest of the world where your stuff is being sold. But when you find out, then there's still nothing you can do about it.
What do you think? This concert here was not announced in the press, but in a few days all the tickets were sold out. Do you think that you have more and more people that...
Well, I would say that it's nice that the people came to the thing. I wish we could have ended it better.
Yeah, the music was too hot.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Wat op zich met je nu album, nu set. Wat wordt er hoe
Oh, the 9-record set?
Yeah.
March 1st.
The first will
No, all of them.
all of them.
Yeah, March 1st. 3-record sets.
And what does that mean that you put out such a lot of unreleased material? What does that mean? Is it something, a period that ended, or?
No, it means that we record a lot of material. What am I supposed to do? Leave it sitting at home?
Yeah.
The only way that I could think to release this, and it's all unreleased material, and most of it's live, and it's performances by the old group and the new group, and it's the history of the group. Some of the tapes are recordings of rehearsals that go back to 1962. There's a lot of information in there for people who want to know about the development of the group. That album, or that collection, will answer a lot of questions. And so that's the reason for putting it out. It's not like trying to set the world's record for the amount of product dumped on the market at one time, because the cost of the albums is not very high. Each 3-record set is $7.98.
Will you, when for example, The Lumpy Gravy album is sold out, I think.
Yeah, I don't think they make that anymore.
You have no influence.
As a matter of fact, I may have some influence this year because I might be able to get the masters back to that from MGM. And if so, I may do some improvements on that album and release it again because I always liked that record. It's one of my favorite ones.
But Bizarre existed then?
No.
Later?
Not at the time Lumpy Gravy came out, no.
Oh, that's fine.
Not in the way it is now. It was a production company at that time, which meant that we were. It was a different contractual arrangement with MGM. Now, Bizarre is a label distributed by Warner Brothers or Kinney in Europe. It's a different arrangement.
Ja, bitte.
What do you think about this Jesus movement in America?
For the people that need that sort of erotic stimulation, I am happy for them.
You think it's an erotic stimulation?
Well, let's just be kind and call it a trend. It is sort of depressing, isn't it?
Yeah, I just want to know
Americans
your opinion.
are Americans are oriented to trends, you know, the twist.
The Swiss are too.
Yeah, you haven't heard.
Yeah.
What was the last big trend in Switzerland?
It was, I think it was wearing some kind of shirt with some print stuff on it, something like that. Or,
Do you think that fondue is a trend?
well, it's a very old one, if it is.
Oh, then that's not going to blow. Or,
You didn't like it?
well, fondue is great when you get it in your mouth, but the way it smells on the way up there is so bad. It's like socks on the end of a fork.
Well, we are a funny people.
No, I'm a funny person because I don't like the way fondue smells. I'm abnormal in that regard.
What do you think your music and what your message? Is there a message that you make conscious?